সম্প্রতি নাট্যকার, অভিনেতা, পরিচালক গিরিশ কার্নাড প্রয়াত হয়েছেন। আমাদের পরিবার বন্ধনের মুখপত্র নাট্যমিক ও জয়তের এবারের সংখ্যায় থাকছে গিরিশ কার্নাড সংক্রান্ত নানাবিধ রচনা। আমরা আজকে সাথে পেয়েছি লিডস বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ের অধ্যাপক জেন প্লাস্টোকে, এবং আমাদের সাথে আছে আমাদের প্রিয় জনসংস্কৃতির কর্ণধার শ্রী সঞ্জয় গাঙ্গুলি। ওনার গিরিশ কার্নাড সংক্রান্ত কিছু মতামত আজকে আমরা শুনে নেব।
So I found you teaching Girish Karnad in the classroom passionately, and you not only have discovered the feminist aspect of Girish Karnad's play, some of his play. You are also largely attracted for his non-Western approach, incorporating or doing justice on tradition, Indian culture, art, things like that. Also, you are largely interested in the theatrical aesthetics he delivered for his spectator. So, my first question would be, how do you see Girish Karnad as a non-Western theatre personality, let's say?
Okay. Well, I think he himself has written quite a lot about where he gets his inspiration from. And he talks about when he was a young man, that he used to be taken with the servants to see the folk form, and then he would be taken with his parents to see the more middle class form of local theatre. And I think obviously he saw that this was a problem, but why should you have one form that is seen for the lower class and one form for the middle class? So he is very interested, I think, in the richness of different Indian theatre traditions, and he sees no problem in stealing, in taking aspects from these different things. But he would also say that he has taken from Western traditions. He says when he finally left and went to the city, he was fascinated by Western theatre, particularly the technology and the possibilities then of making things more theatrical, you know, using lights and sound and effects. So I think he is a man, like many of, I think, the best theatre people, who is a very good thief. Yeah? He is happy to steal wherever he finds something attractive and interesting for his theatre. But of course, he is an Indian man. He is a proud Indian man. He wants to keep it within a framework of predominantly Indian cultural context, but not just one or the other. He will take from wherever. This is my understanding.
So you should call him a faithful stealer, eh?
Yeah.
That, as you say.
Yeah, a good thief, yeah.
So do you see that means, for example, this in mid-19th century, the traditional theatre in India, particularly in Bengal, felt quite threatened by the intervention of the British theatre. And the British rule and the British education system, to a large extent, took us away from our own tradition. And in fact, they developed some kind of hatredness towards our traditional theatre. So slowly, traditional theatre went away from the city. They were confined only in rural areas. And city theatre, which is the most dominant, we call it mainstream theatre. Now they are called mainstream, not the traditional one. So during this transition, there were some theatre makers in the 19th century who actually treated mythology, in a very progressive way. They wanted to prove the dialectics, the argumentative element within mythologies. So the content was very traditional, but the form was Western. So you can see that Girish Karnad, do you think he is taking up from that? Do you see any similarity of this action in 19th century playwrights?
Yeah, I think he's taking it. And this is very common, I think, throughout the world that was colonized. In fact, there is a famous African theorist who talks about 4 stages. So the first stage is when you despise, you get introduced to some new culture and you are taught to despise your own culture. I think this is some of what you are talking about. The next one is when you get a very romantic view of your own cultures, but not something that is based in something. Next one is when you think you can speak for the ordinary people, so you are using something but you are speaking for them. And the fourth only is when you become a kind of organic intellectual, if you like, where you are working with people. So I think you can see, one thing I like about Girish Karnad, I think, is that he is not, I don't think, caught in a colonial contradiction like that, or a post-colonial contradiction. He seems very confident, very happy to appropriate what he sees is useful, but I think because he originally grew up in quite a remote rural area, maybe he has that advantage over some middle-class Indians who were brought up in city areas, that he feels, I think maybe he feels more relaxed about using these indigenous cultural forms because they were live as part of his youth. It wasn't some artificial thing he had to go and find. They were part of him, of his head.
Yeah, he went through all this experience.
Yeah.
But how do you see this reflecting in his plays? You have taught some of his plays.
Yeah, I think he is wonderful. Yeah, I am a huge admirer. So the one I have taught most is Hayavadna.
Hayavadna.
Yeah, which I think is an amazing play. So when I first take it to my students, I usually take it to my students. They are Western students, of course. They have not usually come across anything which is not American or European. So I use Girish Karnad with first-year students because I give it to them, and first of all they look at it and they think, this is just some silly comedy with gods and people with horses' heads. But I think the thing with Girish Karnad is he says very deep things, but he does not need to be all serious and intellectual and pompous in the way he says it, so that it become attractive to a very wide range of people. I think his theatre, I cannot prove this because I have only made it with my students, although I have seen some recordings of productions. But the best theatre makers, can make theatre which can appeal to ordinary people and to intellectuals at the same time. This is surely the main aim of the most brilliant theatre makers. And I think you need to do that by having something which is visually appealing. So, he plays with all these, in Hayavadna, we have the fun with the man with the horse's head, but we have the women doing the lotus thing, we have Ganesh coming on. There is comedy where the horse's head is slowly revealed. These are fun comic things that anyone can just enjoy, because they are clever, they are witty, they are entertaining. He has characters who are quite archetypal, I think, which is often a very good way of reaching people as well. So they are individuals, but they are at the same time representing something more than just the individual. And this again, I think, makes it easy for many of us to relate to them. And then, of course, he has these very serious, profound ideas that he often covers up under some kind of comic routines, you know, where he is talking about the problems of caste, isn't he? He is also talking hugely about marital relations. I mean, he dares to talk actually very daringly about sex, which is not something I see in Indian theatre. So yes, he is talking about women's rights, but he's also talking about sex, about the fact that people naturally want it. I think he is quite, but he does it in a light way. He doesn't force it down your throat, so that you are not, if you don't want to engage with it too much, you can let it steal up on you, you know. He is so this is why I admire him, that it is fun to watch, it is very dynamic, it is full of action, it is drawing on many indigenous theatrical traditions, but it is not feeling like, oh, I must show this in some kind of museum culture way. And he is talking about very deep and profound things, but in ways that are very accessible, even fun. And so my students, by the end, you know, these are English students, they have never come across it. They all think he is amazing, you know, they're going, how can you play all these things off against each other so cleverly. So, yeah.
And what about other plays you taught?
So I'm trying to remember the names, because as I said, it's a while. What's the one with the snake? Nagamandala, yeah. And that's another one that's talking about sex quite a lot, isn't it? Because in the play, the husband is going off, but you know, what is the snake symbolic of? Often kind of, and he even gives alternative endings, doesn't he? Where maybe the snake goes, but maybe the snake continues to live in her head. So, but again, he is not ramming the message down your throat, you know. When you start to read into it, it is there, but he doesn't, but he uses story all the time. I think that he's a great storyteller.
That's the tradition, actually.
Yeah.
কাঠামোগত জায়গা থেকে ওর একটা মানে ওদের একটা বিদেশি আনা ছিল, এটাই মনে হয় থিয়েটারের কাঠামোটা ওর একটা এত আউটস্ট্যান্ডিং মানে গিরিশ কার্নাডের।
He's saying the structure of his play is very outstanding because he could incorporate the Western theatre also. Is it?
I don't think it's because of that. I don't think it would be outstanding. I think he would be outstanding whether he used Western elements or not. I don't think it's dependent on taking the Western elements. I just think he is a man. What I admire is that I don't think he feels I must do this or I must do that. If he sees something which is interesting to him.
It's what you guys are calling organic.
Yeah, I think he feels, why should I not? If it will make my theatre more interesting, more entertaining, why should I not take from somewhere else? Because actually, yeah, his theatre would be hard to make very well, I think, without some technology. It would be difficult to do. You know, there are some tricks and things that work better if you have technology. So I don't think he has taken the essence. I think the essence of the storytelling is very Indian. I think it is just these framing things that he has appropriated from the West. But he often likes layers, doesn't he? You know, he often has an outer storyteller and then maybe 2 or 3 layers inside. And that is clever. That's hard to write well. It looks very simple. But to knit those things together so that actually they are speaking to each other, you find, that is genius.
And in a way, he did not like to be propagandist in that sense, because he didn't want to impose his view or opinion on the audience. He lives it.
He lives it, yeah. He sets us problems, doesn't he? Which I think is again respectful to audiences, rather than saying, I think you should do this, or this is the right thing. It is actually much more respectful to human beings. to set, this is a problem, these are the aspects I see in it, but I am not saying it's not a difficult problem. Yeah. Now, what do you think after we have explored it in various aspects? I very much, this also keeps the imagination going. I think if I watch a play and it gives me a neat answer at the end, I might have enjoyed the play very much, but I go home and I think about something else, because it has been resolved for me. If I am left with something which is not resolved, which remains as a problem, then I come out of the theatre and go, what do you think, Sanjoy? Yeah. I thought this was, and you can say, I had taken it that way.
Yeah. Actually, I find a lot of similarities in the analysis you are making, because if you solve the problem, you don't take the play with you.
Yeah.
You take the play with you when it is.
Yeah, it keeps going round your head, and you're thinking, I hadn't thought of that.
Intellectual incompleteness, some incompleteness, some sufferings.
And it leaves space for your imagination as well, your creativity. So you are kind of co-creating the next life of the thing.
And I strongly feel that this is the this is how our tradition actually came to us, because it was never very didactic, moralistic.
Yeah.
That's the one side of the tradition, but the major part of it was to make people critic. So it's not moral, basically.
Yeah.
It's continuously provoking you to think, to apply your logic, ethics.
Yeah.
So that's what I think, that's how Girish Karnad looked at the tradition, and which we did not see in many playwrights. Because understanding tradition, understanding the philosophy of tradition, understanding the argumentative progress of the tradition was not very well understood by the playwright of his times, actually. That way you are highly colonized and westernized. So there lies the importance of Girish Karnad, and it was amazing to hear it from an English person, you see, who invaded our culture. Huh? Do you want to say anything more except this?
No, I think that's fine, isn't it? Like I say, I've not been thinking about him in depth so much, but no, I am a huge admirer, and I do think, we need more theatre. I think maybe I have seen a little bit of this mainstream theatre in India. I was a bit bored with nearly everything I have seen. It seems very serious, to take itself very seriously. And it's almost as though to be playful, to be creative in some way is to be lower class or something like this. And I like theatre to be theatrical. That's what we're there for. If I go for a lecture, I go for a lecture. If I go to the theatre, I want something to appeal to all my senses, to my intellect as well. But I want it to be visually, plastically, and part of the argument. I think again, Girish Karnad shows us in embodied form. With the snake, with the man, with the horse's head, with the two men in Hayabadna, the one who is the weak intellectual, and so it is not reliant just on words, it's actually showing, and you know what they say, a good picture is worth 1,000 words. And it's not. He's also a man of cinema, isn't he? And I think you can see that he has a very good visual imagination. I get the feeling. You would have to tell me. I get the feeling from the limited amount of modern Indian theatre I see that many people do not seem to be trained in this visual, to prioritize the visual stage language, unless they are doing some dance or something. But there seems to be a contradiction. Dialogue. Yeah, it seems. Yeah, I am not excited to go.
No, because he was in the film, so he had a different approach to this visual art. So maybe in his theatre, because he was also into the film, So there is an additional.
Yeah, I think he has a
dimension.
very good visual eye. You can see that. I can see why he would also have been a man of cinema. And I think, you know, we have to remember that theatre is a visual art as well as a spoken art. Yeah. But I think that's all we need to say.
Yeah.